audience, forgive me. Let's see. First, 3 weeks of absence. I was sick. My hardware switcher. I was, my mother had a terminal disease. I went through spontaneous remission. I fell. I thought the ice had melted, but it hadn't, and I fell from my hoverboard. Do we have hoverboards? Okay. I am back today. April the 6th, 2022. 2022. Okay. How does that make me? Too old to be writing excuses for why I missed a couple of episodes of Beyond the Double Red Doors. Hey, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you for your forbearance and for not abandoning me. How y'all doing? I'm not sure whether or not I should just jump right in this evening, because like what I have planned, or what I at least have kind of scheduled out, kind of a downer. I seem to dwell on that stuff. I've been hoping that, well, first of all, okay, I've been away for, I think the last episode I did, by the way, this is 64th episode, so, you know, to raise your beetle-loving glasses. And yes, I know the color doesn't match between those two cameras. It's a 7.5 ounce can. All is right with the world. Nothing is right with the world. It might seem like I deliberately stepped away during a point in time where maybe I didn't want to discuss what was going on as far as current events goes. Might seem that way. It's not true, but I could see that it might seem that way. I mean, you know. By the way, I'm really happy to see Ms. Ms, I'm glad that you are okay. I mean, I already knew that Ms. was okay, but, you know, there may be some people in chat who did not. Ms. is okay. Ms. lived in the Ukraine, and I said the Ukraine. Ms. lived in Ukraine, but is there no longer. Not sure where you are, Ms., but not in Ukraine. So that's great. So that was all happening, and there was, you know, a lot of reactionary stuff going on around with that frankly I felt like I'm just dropping shit everywhere. Frankly, I felt like, too close. Too close. I'm not going to make a joke about it. And really, like, my opinion doesn't matter. So I didn't really want to get too far into it. And my opinion might not reflect that of the majority of people. Don't want to ostracize anyone. I think I can leave it at something like it was a very, very horrible and inhumane thing for Russia to invade Ukraine. And, we can not talk about the reasons or causation. We don't have to follow the chain of causation here. I mean, I think it's important that somebody does, but perhaps not me. Will Smith slapped Chris Rock. Again, don't. I just don't care that much. I just don't care about that. I don't care enough. This is so sad because I don't care enough about that. Instead, I'll go back and I'll watch videos of Jordan Peterson crying again, which it seems like he's doing more and more. He can't talk about anything with like getting biblical. He'll get biblical, and then he'll cry, and then people will fawn all over him, as if. Ooh. Whoa. It's a big one. People will fawn all over him as if like that, those crocodile tears prove something. Oh shit. Louder? It's not. That's the loudest one I've heard in a while. It's like vibrating everything. Yikes. Okay. I think we're okay. Yeah, see, this is what I'm talking about, right? Wait, we have a new thing here. Sorry. Drag from the edge while holding the option key. How is that any different than what I was doing before? It's not any different. But see, that's what I'm talking about, right? Like I'm not equating those things as being equally important or equally worthy of discussion. I am equating them as being equally uncoverable by me. And yes, exactly. I knew, right? Like, so I have echo cancellation on. That helicopter was loud. But yeah, like I'm going back and I'm watching Jordan Peterson cry over, how he thinks the world is going to hell because nobody is telling the truth. And it seems so obvious to me when I'm watching these things that and I don't see how anyone else doesn't see this, who doesn't follow him or watch more of what he does or what he said or like where he's appeared in the past or read what he's written. I've given that man 2 books worth of money that he didn't deserve. I feel guilty, but I almost feel like I need to offset. That's like a carbon tax I need to pay. The fact that I bought 2 Jordan Peterson books in order to establish my antithetical stance to them. But money is money. I gave him that money, and I'm sure he doesn't care why you buy his book, regardless of what he says. And what he'll say is, of course, like, oh God, am I going to do this? I'm doing it.
Which is a tradition we have now where all the guests that come on write a question for the next guest. So there is a question there for you.
Ooh.
But the guest wrote a question which changed his life, which is, are you happy? And from reading your work and understanding your position on
are you happy? Jordan Peterson's not happy. He's a fucking mess. He's a fucking mess because he can't stand, he can't live the same ideals that he preaches. And he doesn't believe what he's saying. And he's preaching it as truth. and he's probably despairing. Like, I'm trying to think of he's obviously depressed, right? And whatever. I mean, who isn't depressed? Who doesn't suffer from depression? I'd like to spend the next 2 hours talking about the weighing the pros and cons of suicide. I think that'd be great fun to talk about that. But so he's obviously depressed. He's a depressed guy, not this guy.
Happiness and it not being the thing to aim for, which really struck me because I thought,
let's leave him out of focus there for a minute. Look, I just don't get it. I don't get it. Why does the world follow this man? Why do so many people love him? And why does he?
I thought life was the North Star of our lives was to try and be happy. I guess my question is,
okay,
what I was going to ask you that question.
Aim to be good and pray for happiness.
Aim to be good, pray for happiness. Okay. Aim to be good. He doesn't do that. He aims to be posturing and making a lot of money off the Pop 101 psychology that he preaches. He's obviously not happy because, as he talks about in this clip, people are coming up to him all the time saying, hey, what you told me, your words dragged me. Wait, let me go back here. Your words dragged me out of my funk, my deepest, darkest depression. Listening to you dragged me out of that funk and made me able to function in society again, made me whole. Now imagine, if you're somebody who has the actual, lives through the courage of your convictions and lives the words that you state and believes like what you're saying, hearing that must be incredibly inspirational. But imagine if you're a fraud. Like, just imagine if you're a fraud and you're depressed, right? You're depressive and you're a fraud, and you hear people telling you that. Like, what sort of circling pit of despair does that open up underneath you? Because what does that tell you about humanity? If they're so easily duped, if it were me, I would just be like, oh my God, like, really? Like, this shit is people are buying this shit, and I have to like put on this face every time someone comes up to me and tells me that I helped them escape from their despair, when I'm a victim of those doubts that I'm preaching that I don't have. I'm saying that I'm putting the pursuit of truth above all else, but I lie all the time, and nobody seems to be able, or well, a comparatively few number of people seem to be able to see that. And there's a selection bias there. Like, I mean, most people there's not gonna be a lot of people who don't like Jordan Peterson who are trying to track him down and run up and talk to him, whereas a lot of people who like him will.
Which is a tradition we have now where question for me to ask Jordan Peterson.
How are you doing?
How are you doing?
Okay, pray for happiness.
So the question I was going to is pretty much that is, what is a better question for me to ask you if I'm checking in on you? Because we are.
So he doesn't want you to ask about happiness. He doesn't think happiness is a good goal. So happiness, there's two, I guess, schools of thought. There's more than two schools of thought, but there's a couple schools of thought on happiness and what it means and how to achieve it. One is that happiness is a positive state, and sadness is a negative state. That's one school of thought. I think that's wrong, right? Like, I don't believe that at all. My belief is that, and I fully admit this is like a pessimistic belief, but my personal belief is that the threshold, the net negative, or I'm sorry, the baseline of where everyone should be is unhappy. From the moment you are spat out of your mother's uterus, womb, vagina, from the moment that you leave that comfort, and I'd love to see some studies done on late stage fetuses to see if they exhibit any symptoms of depression. I would think that you're generally unhappy, and that unhappiness is occasionally punctuated by moments of what we call happiness, but what really is just like a distraction from unhappiness. So my point of view on it is that when you're happy, you're really just forgetting that you're unhappy. It's the same as, Peter Wessels-Alpha's thoughts on it. It's the same as Schopenhauer's thoughts on it. It's not the same as Epicurus. It's not the same as the Stoic thought on it. It's not really the same as the nihilistic thought on it. It's more, it's a little more despairing than that. It is, if you are looking at the truth, you are unhappy. If you are happy, you are deceiving yourself. And I feel like we have like this built-in bias to like feel like that would be horrible if that were true. If we were to say that the only way that we can not be depressed is to constantly jump from distraction to distraction. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like, look around, look at what you do every day and what makes you happy and what makes you unhappy. And look at what people do like across the course of their lives just to be able to continue to function. Now, I'll admit, well, I won't admit, but I realize that this is a little bit elitist, right? In that it requires, in order for this sort of situation to arise, you kind of have to not have many other problems. If you have large scale problems in your life or the lives of those that you love, then really what we're talking about here is like the well set table, sort of idle hands who are, and this is Epicurus, right? Which is, be as hedonistic as possible, and be as hedonistic as possible so you can finally arrive at the conclusion that no amount of hedonism is going to actually make you happy or happy for very long, and that everything will wear off, and you will, if you are not constantly giving yourself those hits, and maybe it's, maybe your baseline is here, maybe you're doing this, but you're trying not to come back down to here. If you're not constantly giving yourself those hits, and those hits have diminishing returns, just like any drug does, then you're going to fall back into a pit of despair. So and it pisses me off when I see stuff like this where he's like, well, no, don't shoot to be happy, shoot to be good and hope that happiness follows. And then he says like, well, what's a better question to ask? How you doing? How are you doing? It's the same fucking question. It's the same question. Like he's being pedantic over semantics. And how are you doing is exactly the same as are you happy? Because if I say are you happy, like you could say these are, I'm forgetting the word for those phrases that people say that they don't really want an answer to, but like you all right in England, or how you doing here, right? Really, how you doing is actually in America, how you doing is much less seeking or sort of sympathetic than are you happy, because how are you doing does not expect a real answer. How are you doing expects you to just say fine, right? And again, I'm forgetting, somebody maybe remembers the name of those particular phrases that people say that don't actually, they sound like questions, but they're not rhetorical, but it's questions that people sort of, no, it's not a rhetorical question. There's another phrase for things like how you doing, that don't actually want an answer. What'd I miss? My beard looks great. Going through all of this, that's what I pick out. Let's see. Well, I mean, that step is I'm not going to bomb anyone. But certainly, I did actually just recently watch Charlotte Copley's take on the Unabomber. I thought it was a little pedestrian, sort of like kind of like if you just pull up the Unabomber Wikipedia page and you sort of pumped that into an AI for writing a screenplay. And it was just like, on this day, he did this thing. All right, let's show him doing this thing. On this day, he did this thing. It was very just sort of dry, although I like Charlotte Copley. I did not think the movie was very good. And I think that the Unabomber would be a pretty good subject for a movie. The thing is, you'd have to, in my opinion, like dive deeper into the psychology of who Ted Kaczynski was prior to deciding that he needed to kill people to make his point. And they didn't do that. It was really just like can I go to the hardware store and buy this stuff? And then how do I make a bomb? And, oh, I'm not very good at making bombs. And then, oh, my brother turned me in. But I don't take that as oh, Katerina, good night. Thank you for coming by. You only want to be awoken if I start talking about the extravaganza. I don't know if that's tonight. I think tonight is more of a getting back in the swing of things. Because it's been a bit that was so nice. So kind. Pivy. Well, I don't know your actual. I don't know your circumstances, you know, and I don't want to try and make that, or I want to try and not make that same error of applying my state of mind or the state of mind of the philosophy that I happen to think is the closest to the truth, and apply it across the board. Like, I don't want to do that. And yet I am doing it a little bit. Yeah, exactly. Well, but that's sort of my point here, is like he's making a big deal out of nothing.
Which is a tradition we have now where we ask that question with good intentions. Mm-hmm. Are you happy? What's a better question for me to ask Jordan Peterson?
How are you doing?
How are you doing? How are you doing?
What is this? Well, like, what is that dramatic pause? Like, he asked him to ask him the question, right? And he's got to be deep about it. He can't just give you like a regular answer. He's got to really kind of really think about, like, well, how can everything that comes out of my mouth will be analyzed and it needs to be revered. What can I say?
Brilliantly and terribly.
What a fucking joke. Okay. Brilliantly and terribly. Can we follow this a little more? And look at that, like that look. That's like a challenging, I dare you to call me on this bullshit look. Like he thinks he is so fucking intimidating. He does. Oh, bam. And that's like the classic sort of horror movie move, right? Look at the person, give them that real sort of penetrating stare, and right at the last second, just burst into a goofy smile. And it just doesn't mean anything anymore, right?
That's...
Yeah.
You know, when you listen...
Yeah, by the way, just like to remind you all, the question he's answering here is, how are you doing?
To a profound piece of music.
He loves, like lately, here's another thing he loves to do lately, is Jordan Peterson fucking loves to talk about music. One, like he knows much about it, and you don't need to know much about music to be moved by it, obviously, or to talk about it. But he does talk about music in like a really sort of insultingly vapid way sometimes, where he talks about like the complexity of music and harmony and melody interacting. This is actually one time where he talks about music in a way that is a little better, in my opinion, anyway. Like I've heard him before say that, like, well, simple music where you can predict the melody and the harmony, and there's not much change going on, and there aren't movements, and it's just sort of repetitive. That's not, valuable music, and of course that's bullshit. That's missing like entire loads of nuance that go into music. Here he actually gets it a little closer to the mark. Again, in my opinion,
which is a tradition we have now where
I hate that I have to keep. Okay, he's about to talk about music.
When you listen to a profound piece of music, one that sort of spans the whole emotional experience, it's not happy. Happy is elevator music. And
no, I would argue happy is not elevator music. Happy can be the saddest music in the world. All right. You can listen to the most cathartic, saddest piece of music in the world, and it gets you into a place that allows you to marvel at the fact that music has the power to do that to you. And when you feel that, and especially, this is sort of my opinion on live music as well. I'm a fan of live music. I'm a fan of musicals. I recently saw Hadestown, which I liked. I didn't love, but I liked. But it's the first musical, not concert, but the first musical I've seen since the pandemic. And seeing that kind of like accord between humans, the displays of sort of grace and coordination that go on, and the cleverness that goes on with set design, like seeing all of that come together, like for me, that's super, super elevating. So that even like an average musical to me, again, live, it really has to be live, like watching it on a television. I don't know. It's like watching magic on a TV. I can't really get into watching magic on a TV, but live, if there's a good magic show, sure, great. It's something about the provenance of being in the place and seeing it happen. And even if you know that, like, okay, well, this is just recorded, we didn't do anything to it. When you're watching it and it's not live, there's something lost there, in my opinion. But what was my point? What was my point? Oh, right. So this is one time where I think he gets music a little closer to the mark. But I don't think that saying that music is happy, like you can't just say this is a happy piece of music, right? You could say this doesn't move me, or this is not a moving piece of music, and maybe it is for you, and it could be for somebody else. It could have like an attachment, and that all goes back to the sort of productive consumption that we've talked about before, whereby like you're not a passive consumer of anything, whether books or movies or music, whatever it is. You have to be a productive consumer. You don't have to be, but I think you get more out of it if you're a productive consumer and you actually exert effort to try and bring all of the weight of your own pathos to whatever it is that the author may be trying to say. And if the author is trying to say something different than what you get out of it, what matters is what you get out of it and not what the author gets out of it. And that's going back to, again, what we've talked about, like with Roland Barthes' Death of the Author. So I don't give a hell about whether or not a piece of music is on its surface happy or not. And I don't really think you can judge. Like I generally don't like silly music, right? But I could see there being music, especially like, there's sort of a nefarious undertone to like carnival music and stuff. I could see that kind of almost waltzy kind of thing being nefarious in a way, kind of like his look was a minute ago when he just went like that. I mean, what the fuck was that? He plays mind games with everybody, doesn't he? Okay, let's continue.
Which is a tradition we have now where
It's depth, it's shallow. That's a problem.
It's not a problem.
It doesn't have that deep sense of awe and horror, I would say, that is characteristic of the best of all music. You know, you listen to some simple music, so-called. Hank Williams is a good example. You know,
I feel like he has changed his tune when he's talking about music, because this is a recent interview. And if you go back to his earlier interviews, he I think he was a little bit schooled in this subject, and now he will like not just slag off simple music for being simple. Mm-hmm.
Blues cowboy from the 50s who died of alcoholism when he was 27 and whose voice sounds like an 80-year-old man. Simple melody, you know, but there's nothing simple in the song and in the voice. It's deep, you know, it's like the blues. It's like black blues in the States from the 20s, and this was certainly influenced by that tradition. There's this admission of a deep suffering at the same time as you get the beautiful transcendence of the music.
Okay. He's starting to lose it. Which now, like, this is kind of going back to, okay, Jordan Peterson is depressed, right? He suffers from depression. It's really clear that he suffers from depression. And certainly lots of psychologists. My father was a psychiatrist who suffered from depression. A lot of psychiatrists are in the physician heal thyself category, where he is, and I don't know why he went into clinical psychology, but maybe he's been suffering from depression his whole life. I'm not attacking the fact that he suffers from depression. I think this is going to sound horrible. I think if you don't suffer from depression in some form, at some point in your life, you're probably not paying very close attention. And maybe there was a point in your life where you did suffer from depression and you managed to be able to overcome it using one of the techniques, maybe using distraction, maybe using antidepressants, maybe even using pop psychology, you know, to get whatever works for your particular brain. Great. All right, let's wrap this up.
Which is a tradition we have now where all the guests...
All right, I'm going to complain to Ecamm that they're not letting me... Where's he crying?
Doesn't example. Melody 20s. It has to be deep. And you know, deep moves you tectonically, and it's not a trivial thing. But that's better than happiness. And maybe if you're lucky while you're pursuing that and while you're immersed in it, you get to be happy, and you should fall on your knees and be grateful for that when it happens. You know, it's a gift. It really is a gift. And it comes upon you unexpectedly, your happiness, you know. But
also not true.
You aim to climb uphill to the highest peak you can possibly envision. And that's better than happiness.
Why did you include terribly?
I'm happy to talk about this, Pivy. I mean, I certainly believe it. I don't think that it's... I mean, I feel like you might be saying that in a way that's like, well, that's insulting to people who are not depressed. I think self-delusion is an integral coping mechanism to deal with life. I think even whether you're depressed or not, people do it all the time. Why does he look on the verge of tears? Because, I mean, it's hard to find a clip of him where he's not on the verge of tears. And yes, I realize that like I really tried. I don't know what to tell you. I really did try. But Pivy, I'm happy to talk more about this. I'm not saying that if you're not depressed, that you're simple, or that you don't have the capacity for deep thought, or aren't even thinking deeply right now. I'm saying that if you have gone through your entire life, and let's say you're over the age of 20, hey, what's this? I don't know what you're saying there, Pivy. Do you want to call in? Oh wow, Nico, thank you. That's very kind. But no, we're trying to think of it as exposure therapy. Oh well, here, like Ms. just Ms. just said it. But yeah, think of it as exposure therapy,
which is a tradition we have now where
God damn it.
That's awful in the most fundamental sense, but
So awful in the most fundamental sense. Of course, what he's saying there is in awe.
you need an antidote to suffering, and it has to be deep. And deep moves you tectonically, and it's not a trivial thing. But that's better than happiness. And maybe if you're lucky while you're pursuing that and while you're immersed in it, you get to be happy, and you should fall on your knees and be grateful for that when it happens. It's a gift. It really is a gift. And it comes upon you unexpectedly, your happiness,
So see, yeah, I don't believe that. I think happiness can strike you unexpectedly, but I wouldn't say that is the normal way in which happiness comes upon you.
You aim to climb uphill to the highest peak you can possibly envision. And that's better than happiness.
No, it is happy.
Why did you include terribly?
Well, for example, now when I go, wherever I go in the world, people come up to me and they're usually, I wouldn't say they're happy to see me.
I wouldn't say that either, but lest you think he's about to talk about how people come up to him and challenge him. That's not what he's about to say.
They're often in tears, and they often have a pretty rough story to relate. They were suicidal or nihilistic or homicidal or trapped, desperate, and they tell me that real fast. And then they say, I've overcome that to a large degree, and thank you for that. And you think, well, that's really something to have that happen over and over. In some ways, you might think, well, how could anything better possibly happen to you than to have people come up to you all over the world, strangers, and open themselves up like that, like they're old friends so quickly. But at the same time, it's an awe.
I mean, what he's talking about here is like similar to like what, performers and musicians get all the time. This is not unique to his particular brand of self-help. But again, I would postulate like try to view this through the lens of imagine you're a fraud. Imagine you're a fraud and people are coming up to you and telling you how you really are like the one truth that got them through life. I would feel so empty in that case. Like I would feel so, first of all, I'd feel horrible about myself, right? Just for doing that. But I would mostly like just be like, oh shit, like if this is what, oh hey, I wanted to, damn it. Meant to have you on. There we go. Totally forgot about that. All right. And again, lost my train of thought.
Which is a tradition we have now where
people come up to me and they're usually...
People come up to him.
I wouldn't say they're happy to see me. They're
Wouldn't
often
either.
in tears, and they tell me that real fast.
Yeah, okay.
And to have people come up to you all over the world, strangers, and open themselves up like that, like they're old friends so quickly. But at the same time, it's an awful thing because you see, even in the revelation of their triumph, the initial depth of their despair.
Like, why did he phrase it that way? Like, in the revelation of their triumph, you see the depth of their despair. Like, if I came up to you and was like, you saved me, I was going to kill myself, and now I'm not because of you, right? Like, you could just say, like, it sucks that the natural condition for a lot of people seems to be that of depression. Right, Jordan?
So I wouldn't change that.
Oh.
But it's not.
These are crocodile tears to me. Like, I don't know how else to say it.
It's certainly not just happiness.
But yes, it is just happiness. And I guess that's sort of the main point that I'm trying to make there is that happiness is not, in my mode of thinking, happiness is not a birthday party. Happiness is not, I just got a new car. Happiness is not, I'm jumping up and down for joy because I just got married. For me, happiness is a warm gun. So let's change tacks a little bit because I don't want to go too far down the Peterson rabbit hole. I've already gone way further down than I wanted to. I do want to at least call out that one good thing that's happened in the past couple of weeks is that Ketanji Brown Jackson looks like she's going to be confirmed. And that's awesome. And I think it's significant. And I think it is actually going to have an effect on I think it's unarguably the most important branch of government, the judicial branch. The only branch where people are appointed for life. Has a sitting Supreme Court justice ever been removed? I should have looked that up. It would be, you know what? What am I saying? I should have looked that up. Watch this. And I'll look it up right now. Samuel Chase, an intensely partisan opponent of President Thomas Jefferson, Senate refused to convict and remove him. So it has literally never happened. So basically, once you pass that hearing, I mean, what can you do? Like, you can't do much. But anyway, Ketanji Brown Jackson is going to, I think, be an excellent proponent for expanding the 14th Amendment. I think will help protect Roe v. Wade, Brown versus the Board of Education, a few other rulings that it seemed like might be in danger. So I don't know. I feel like that's definitely something to celebrate. I do think it's going to be interesting to see, and I think I probably even said this in the last stream, I think it's going to be interesting to see what John Roberts starts to do. There was even a ruling today or yesterday where he does these largely sort of symbolic siding with the liberal judges in cases where his siding with the dissenting minority doesn't change the outcome of the case. And why does he do that? Right? He does that because it makes the court look less partisan. He doesn't seem to do it in cases where it's actually going to switch the outcome of the case. He'll only do it when it's going to be like 5-4 and he joins the 4, because right now the Supreme Court is pretty conservative heavy. Ketanji Brown Jackson will bring it a little closer back into alignment. I wasn't hoping that a certain Supreme Court justice who was ill recently that anything horrible would befall him. But if that had happened, I would have thought like, oh, okay, well, there's another chance. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So if Ketanji Brown Jackson she's all but confirmed. So that is one good thing that happened in the past month. So hooray. And I've been thinking about what I'm going to do with a few things. I've been thinking about what I'm going to do with the Phoenician Sailor channel. I've been thinking about what I'm going to do with these. For those of you who don't know, I deactivated the Phoenician Sailor Patreon as of this month. And I just did that because thank you, Nick. Yeah, that is who I was referring to. So deactivated the Patreon account because I'm just not doing enough. And wondering, and I've wondered this many times, and it makes me reluctant to bring it up because I don't want to say something and then not deliver. But I really do feel like the joy of creating ASMR videos for me is largely gone. What I like doing, and I don't even like doing it that much, but I think that's in part because I feel like so precious about the Phoenician Sailor channel just by virtue of the fact that it's been around for a long time now, and there's like maybe 4 videos that I'm proud of that are on it. And so I've been like very reluctant to touch it in any way that could possibly disrupt it. It's the reason that I made this channel separate. And after doing some gameplay videos on that channel, and now I'm just wondering, like, would I enjoy doing ASMR videos that were kind of like more like this and more sort of live streamy and just kind of like, maybe I've done a couple videos where I'm basically just like writing and letting, sorry, gotta get off the bottom here. Well, like I did at the beginning here, where I'll just be typing and saying what I type and sort of using that as an impetus to write more. Originally, there was this idea in the back of my head that that's part of what I would use this live stream for, would be to encourage myself to write or be more productive in some way, like to just do something, right? I do like that. Oh, you can see the coins I have in here waiting down, and you can see my "Don't Tread on Me" flag in the background. I promise you, I'm not a libertarian. That is a satirical flag back there. But this was so much fun. So anyway, I guess what I was thinking was that I be a little more lax in the videos I make for the Venetian Sailor channel, and thereby, perhaps, it's a strong perhaps, it's a weighted perhaps, thereby perhaps become more prolific. I've tried this before. It has not worked. I just want to find inspiring scenarios and recreate them and reinvent them to some extent with new, well, I guess it would be new within the parameters of a given scenario, new content. What, you all don't think I'm... Who's saying... Really, huh? Let's see what we got here. How about this? If only you would touch my heart. If only you were to put your mouth to my heart. Your delicate mouth, your teeth. If you were to put your tongue like a red arrow there where my dusty heart is beating. If you were to blow on my heart near the sea weeping, it would make a dark noise, like the drowsy sound of train wheels, like the indecision of waters, like autumn in full leaf, like blood, with a noise of damp flames burning the sky, with a sound like dreams or branches or the rain, or foghorns in some dismal port. If you were to blow on my heart near the sea like a white ghost, in the spume of the wave, in the middle of the wind, like a ghost unleashed at the seashore weeping, like a long absence, like a sudden bell, the sea doles out the sound of the heart, raining, darkening at sundown, on a lonely coast. No question the night falls, and its mournful blue of the flags of shipwrecks peoples itself with the planets of throaty silver, and the heart sounds like a sour conch, calls, O sea, O lament, O molten panic, scattered in the unlucky and disheveled waves. You mean Neruda like that? Can I do it in Spanish? Si solamente me tocaras el corazón. Si solamente pusieras tu boca en mi corazón. Tu fina boca, tus dientes. Si pusieras tu lengua como una flecha roja. I can't really do it in Spanish. At least, not in a way that I won't be made fun of for doing. There's some Neruda for you. Got distracted. More James Franco poetry. Has he written more? Has he written more? Amy would like me to read Every Day You Play. I don't know if it's in this collection. Well, I think this is everything. So maybe it is. Is Every Day You Play too much? Some of his titles. I Like You When You're Quiet. Every Day You Play, I'm not. Hold on. Rise Up and Be Born With Me. Ode to a chestnut on the ground that I passed one summer morning. Ode to a watch in the night that I passed one winter evening. Oh. This one sounds good. Full woman, carnal apple. I don't see the one that you're referring to here, Amy. I am interested in this full woman, carnal apple, though. Yep. Pretty much. Pretty much what I thought it would be. Okay, I have no problem with sensual poetry, and I know that Pablo Neruda is an excellent poet. However, I have to say, like, and I should have known by the title, I think anyone might know by the title, Full Woman, Carnal Apple, feels a little sophomoric to me. It's short, so let's read it. But I'm going to be reading it not in the spirit in which it's intended. Full woman, carnal apple, hot moon, thick smell of seaweed, crushed mud and light. What obscure clarity opens between your columns? I'm sorry. I find this a little humorous. I do think he's excellent. Doesn't mean that he doesn't occasionally write something that's a little bit 15-year-old fan fiction-y. Loving is a voyage with water and with stars, with suffocating air and brusque storms of flower. Loving is a battle of lightning bolts and two bodies overcome by one honey. This is starting to sound a little James Franco to me. I'm sorry. Kiss by kiss, I travel across your small infinity, your images, your rivers, your diminutive villages. And the genital fire, transformed into delight, runs through the narrow trails of the blood until it plunges itself like a nocturnal carnation, until it is and is nothing more but a ray in the shadows. I don't love that. Don't love that. Sorry. But Amy, tonight I could write the saddest lines. That isn't here. And I don't want, like I said, I like a lot of his poetry, so I'm not talking crap about him generally. That's page 9. Okay. Let me, this is going to be the last one. I like this one. I vaguely remember this one. And I like it. And it's not, there's no genital fire here. Okay. I can write the saddest verses tonight. Right? For example, the night is full of stars, twinkling blue in the distance. The night wind spins in the sky and sings. I can write the saddest verses tonight. I loved her, and sometimes she loved me too. On nights like this, I held her in my arms. I kissed her so many times beneath the infinite sky. She loved me. At times I loved her too. How not to have loved her great, still eyes. I can write the saddest verses tonight, to think that I don't have her, to feel that I have lost her, to hear the immense night, more immense without her. And the verse falls onto my soul like dew onto grass. What difference that my love could not keep her? The night is full of stars, and she is not with me. And that's all. In the distance, someone sings. In the distance. My soul is not at peace with having lost her. As if to bring her closer, my gaze searches for her. My heart searches for her, and she is not with me. The same night that whitens the same trees, we of then, now, are no longer the same. I no longer love her, it's true, but how much I loved her. My voice searched for the wind that would touch her ear. Another's, she will be another's, as before my kisses, her voice, her bright body, her infinite eyes. I no longer love her, it's true, but maybe I love her. Love is so short, forgetting is so long. Because on nights like this, I held her in my arms. My soul is not at peace with having lost her. Though this may be the final sorrow she causes me, and these, the last verses I write for her. I love that. I think that's great. I think that beats Carnal Apple, Full Woman Carnal Apple, hands down. Good night, Oxy. I hope you have a good evening. But yeah, so I did have some Neruda laying around here. But now, if you don't mind, I'd love to get back to suicide. Yeah, Amy, I agree. That's a beautiful line. I like Rilke, but I don't know, maybe. And I think I actually do have. Do I have Rilke here? I don't see it, but I'm not looking too hard for it. Sorry. All right. Hey, check it out. Come on. Do what you're supposed to do. There we go. Albert Camus, The Myth of Sisyphus. Now, it's important to note, and it was important to note in starting to read this book, a lot of people think of Camus as a depressed, existential, suicidal. Mambo number suicide. I can be distracted. Like that is the goal of that's the goal of my existence, is to be distracted. It's important to note in the preface that Camus wrote to The Myth of Sisyphus. Everybody's aware of the fable of Sisyphus. He's pushing the rock up the hill. Every day he pushes it up a certain amount and it falls down twice as much or a little more than he pushes it up each day. It's interminable labor. It's meant to represent futility. But this is the myth of Sisyphus. So he writes, "For me, the myth of Sisyphus marks the beginning of an idea which I was to pursue in The Rebel." It's excellent. It attempts to resolve the problem of suicide as the rebel attempts to resolve that of murder. In both cases, without the aid of eternal values, which temporarily, perhaps, or absent or distorted in contemporary Europe. The fundamental subject of the myth of Sisyphus is this: it is legitimate and necessary to wonder whether life has a meaning. Therefore, it is legitimate to meet the problem of suicide face to face. The answer, underlying and appearing through the paradoxes which cover it, is this. This is Camus speaking here. Even if one does not believe in God, suicide is not legitimate. That's Camus saying suicide is not legitimate. Written 15 years ago in 1940 amid the French and European disaster, this book declares that even within the limits of nihilism, it is possible to find the means to proceed beyond nihilism. In all the books I've written since, I have attempted to pursue this direction, although the myth of Sisyphus, I have problems saying that, poses mortal problems. It sums itself up for me as a lucid invitation to live and to create in the midst of a desert. So, I mean, here Camus being stoic. It's being stoic. I think as he got older, he maybe became more stoic. There's but one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. Judging whether life is worth living or not amounts to answering the fundamental question of philosophy. All the rest, whether or not the world has 3 dimensions, whether the mind has 9 or 12 categories, comes afterwards. These are games. One must first answer. I've never seen anyone die for the ontological argument. Well, maybe Philip Meinlander might have something to say about that. So if we're talking about absurdism and suicide, so yeah, he's absurdist. Does absurdism dictate death? For a man who does not cheat, what he believes to be true must determine his action. Anyway, point is Camus is anti-suicide. He is all for trying to search beyond that which. Am I talking too fast? Am I talking too fast? Okay, I'll slow down a little bit. Let me take a breath. So what I'm comparing a little bit are the philosophies between someone like Albert Camus, okay, yeah, the happy existentialist, but an existentialist nonetheless, and someone like Jean Amory or Philip Meinlander or Arthur Schopenhauer, who would fall on the other side of that question and suggest that suicide is actually the more desirable of the 2 options. Camus is saying you can acknowledge life and just you can acknowledge the absurdity of life and fight to bring meaning to that absurdity. And then you can either choose to continue to live in absurdity and in the acknowledgement of that absurdity, or exit the stage. Trying to go slow here. I mean, this is difficult to talk about for, I mean, really, there's a lot of reasons, but everybody has a life bias. So I don't think anybody here, I'm sure there's an exception, but I don't think anyone here, and I'm talking about if you've had near-death experiences, whatever, I don't think you can escape this bias. I think even if you choose to opt out of living, you suffer under this bias. And this bias is a negative bias against choosing to opt out. And because of that, if nothing else, because of that, I would think that we could find it in our hearts. Certainly I can find it in my heart to be compassionate towards people who are in such states of suffering that their desire to end their suffering is able to overcome like every spasming memory, every muscle in their body, every thought, apart from these particular thoughts, but the pre-programmed thoughts that are trying desperately to prevent this action. Millions of years of biology programmed to prevent this event. Is that valid? I don't know if that's valid. I don't know if we can say that evolution or natural selection really has much of a say when it comes to suicide. From evolution's point of view, from evolution's point of view, once you hit 35 or 40, which I just recently have, from evolution's point of view, like evolution doesn't really care about you very much once you hit that threshold. That's why, we crave sugar and fat and not, generally speaking, kale and carrots, because you can hit your peak reproductive and child caring ages pretty much living on butter and sugar. Uh-oh, Karen, why are you angry? Uh-oh. Oh, Levy, how are you doing? That's interesting, Olevi, because that would seem, obviously that has an implication, right? Assuming that it's true. I wouldn't want 23andMe telling me if I had that gene. And it's not just because I wouldn't trust them. Hey, Maddie. Yeah, I've missed you too. I've missed everybody. That's why we're talking about suicide. Thank you. I like it. And the color goes well. I don't know if you noticed, like red, yellow, red, red, red. That's why I wanted that light on, to go with the yellow. And I screwed it up. Well, we've all, I think, experienced that, or a lot of us have experienced that. It's no fun. I hope it resolves. Imagine, yeah, if there were a gene, a single gene, I would think it would be a series of genes, but maybe if there were a single gene that could predict, I wonder what that gene, if that gene predicts suicidal ideation or more the wherewithal or the ability to sort of follow through with it. What do you mean? I do this all the time. Really? Like this chair is not actually red. You realize that this chair is not actually red, right? This is a hoodie that I've tied around the chair. The chair is blue. I am thinking about color all the damn time. But that's why I was upset that I forgot about the light, because that was the reason that I wanted to have a yellow light to match the yellow in the hoodie. I want it to be subtle, but I also, if I could change the color on these lights, believe me, I would. Oh, I see what's happening here. I get it. I see what's happening here. Hi, Nash. Hey, Jessica. How are you doing? This makes me sad. This makes me sad. The chair is blue. You're right. The chair is blue. And the dress is gold. Well, I don't have a lot to say about color theory, honestly. I just like to, and I mean, no one will notice this, but the green here is supposed to match the green here. It doesn't quite, but I was trying to get it close. This green doesn't match. This is, I don't know what the hell. It looks yellow. But yeah, I think about this stuff probably far too much. I should think more about content than I do about, I actually don't love this the green light hitting me on the back of the head. Wait, what? The hoodie. What? I don't think it's an ugly. Is it an ugly flag? Why is it an ugly flag? I think it's a nice flag. Yeah. Yes. It's a tourist's hoodie. Anyway, suicide. We were talking about the role of evolution in eliminating suicide, and it just seems like it doesn't really have a role, or doesn't have much of a role. What? No, not true. I actually quite like it, and I think it has bold colors, and I like the colors. I actually really like that. I really like the flag. So, but I'm not buying into this. My eyes are green. I think, according to Photoshop, the eyes are green. I think I can turn off. Echo cancellation. Improve the sound a little bit. Do you really want to know what I think about? I mean, what? There is only one thing to think about this. Right? This is American exceptionalism, and America is also exceptional at creating excuses for itself to do as I say and not as I do. But that's it. That's one line. I can't go much further than that. So evolution doesn't have a lot to say about suicide. Evolution just cares that you make it to reproductive age. It's like Logan's Run. I guess there is something to be said for instance, there being a proportion of your population reaching especially if you're a tribal group of beings, as we are, reaching the age of being an elder. So you want some proportion of your population to reach that age, but what does it need to be? 1 in 10, something like that. Maybe. Doesn't need to be a lot. You only need a few to curb juvenile impulses, or to help curb juvenile impulses. This reminds me of the story that Richard Feynman told. Richard Feynman, for those of you who don't know who Richard Feynman is, he was a scientist. He, along with I think Julian Schwinger, developed a lot of the fundamentals of what became quantum physics, quantum electrodynamics. And he also worked, say, at Los Alamos, developing the nuclear bomb. But on top of that, he was a Renaissance man. He was. I really am looking to see if there are any other questions to take me off this track. But if there aren't, I'm going to keep going. On top of that, he was a Renaissance man. And he was really entertaining. And you can actually buy his lectures on physics, which are I think the first 2 years of physics lectures that he gave when he taught at the Massachusetts Institute at MIT. And they're great. And like, you can kind of I'm speaking for myself, I kind of understand them. He wrote scientific texts, he wrote QED, he wrote a bunch, and they're surprisingly, like, if you have a passing knowledge of calculus, you can understand what he's talking about, even if you don't like get all of the math, right? And Feynman diagrams are fun to look at and think about. But he was an artist. He was actually a pretty good artist, and came to art late in life. He was a musician, kind of. He loved music and he loved playing bongos. And he had kind of a tragic life because he fell in love quite young, got married young, and his wife died of tuberculosis. And after his wife died of tuberculosis, see, now I don't know. Now I don't know if y'all are just saying stuff to get me off topic or not. What do I think of the suspicions that Russia does not have enough next-gen guided delivery missile systems for them to... I don't have enough information on this, Nico. I think anecdotally, right, what we know about Russia and what Americans know about Russia and their ability. Look, I'm Gen Xer, right? I remember Yakov Smirnov. So I was alive during the Cold War. We had drills when I was very young where we had to get under our desks. I don't know why. I guess if we were like far enough away from the blast that all it did was destroy the building, then maybe being under the desk would have had some short-term palliative effect, but we still would have died from radiation. So my anecdotal knowledge of, and Chernobyl speaks to this, right, of Russia's upkeep is not good. Do I think is that a bet I'm willing to take? No, of course not. That's a great question, Nasha. Probably for the humiliation of it. I think I would want to use it against him in some way. And I don't know why. Well, I know I don't like him. I don't know about this. Yeah, distract me. Great show. Really painful to watch. It's interesting because I remember it happening, and although I was very, very young, it seems to me like it the way that it was portrayed in the HBO miniseries, as far as like how it was, how the information got out, it seemed like there was very little information. And I realized I was young, right? And there was probably stuff that I didn't understand. But it did seem to me like, well, that's a big thing. Having a meltdown like that at a BLM BLMS reactor. I forgot the acronym for the type of reactor that Chernobyl was. That was not supposed to be able to have a meltdown. Of course, it's like the Titanic. The moment something cannot happen, in Douglas Adams's words, once something gets all the way around to the point where it's absolutely impossible to happen, it's actually inevitable that it will happen almost immediately. Hey, Grace. Good to see you. I hope you're doing well. And I'm not following enough to. Am I full of myself? I don't know. And I thought that, like, you know, it was horrifying that as children we were getting under our desks because of the Cold War. But whatever, millennials and Gen Zers have school shooter drills all the time, and a lot more people dying from school shooters than from the Cold War. So who had it worse, right? Maybe, I don't know. The idea to me of a school shooter is far more frightening than this sort of nebulous possible sword of Damocles that is mutually assured destruction. Oh my gosh, Karen. The day after, that scarred me. That was like a when I was young, that watching that scarred me. And I remember watching it because I had an aunt and uncle and cousins who lived in D.C. My uncle was a forensic psychiatrist for the CIA, which I probably am not supposed to say, but we would come up and visit. So that was my experience with D.C. when I lived back there in South Florida. But I remember watching the day after up here, really like, wow, it's strange to think about this, really like a few miles from where I am now, at my uncle's house. Watching the day after, it was a mini series that came on, I don't know, ABC, one of those networks. And it scared the hell out of me. And I remember thinking like, oh, fuck. I watched this and like, we're like in Washington, D.C. If this goes down, this is definitely, like, we're definitely going to get nuked, and being scared and like wanting to leave D.C. as soon as possible because of that. It was scary. Scary. Very scary. Same here, writer of minds. I really, really like your profile picture, by the way. All right, so we're back to Richard Feynman. Wife died of tuberculosis. She was in a sanatorium for a while. I'm not getting into physicists. Pilfs, I guess it would be. Oh, astrophysicists, elves. Let's just make it physicists. The acronym works better. Yeah, to be honest with you, like, I don't want to be one of the malingerers. I would rather just have the flash and then nothing. Exactly, Ms. Pilfs. Physicists, I would like to... By the way, here's something else I found funny. I found this very funny. So funny. It was so funny. Do I have this? I think I do.
Like, I don't know if that thing that they just did with the COVID is, like, somebody should probably be looking into that. Like, I don't know if that thing that they just did with the COVID is, like, panned out or not. But if it did, that's, like, somebody should probably be looking into that. Like, I don't know.
Where was I trying to get that? I have to load this, so give me one moment.
Which is a tradition we have now where all the guests that come on write a question for the next guest. So there is a question in there for you. But the guest wrote a question.
All right, I'm going to add a new one so we don't have to suffer through that. Ooh. You're not supposed to get that view. That reveals secrets. Can I do this? I don't know if I can do this actually.
Here we are, face to face, a couple of silver spoons, hoping to find we're two of a kind. Make it a go, make it grow together.
By mid-June, that's a date that California, I know,
if they allow us, if they grant us that, our kings, the people in power, you're going to listen to these people?
Well, I know
they've destroyed our economy.
Wake up!
Hard as you can at your damn job for like 6 weeks, right? All flat out. You know, if you work 10% longer hours, you make 40% more money. That's something worth thinking about. You know, you've got a job, maybe you show up.
This is what I wanted to show. This is terrible, right? Absolutely terrible.
15 minutes early, and you leave 15 minutes late. You know, and you actually work, and your boss notices.
Why would you do that?
He would probably notice, and then maybe someone's going to get promoted, and maybe it'll be you, because something's going to eventually, because he learned if he put some damn effort into it. And
there's actually something I found funny about
optimist
this.
here. Like, I know that people hit, like, there's no shortage of randomness and horror that can wipe you.
Okay, by the way, this video has like millions of views, and you know, somebody went through the time and trouble to collect all of this B-roll footage and put this music bed behind it, and put the words there for you. But they really fucked up here.
Even if you're doing your best, but you don't have a better bloody plan than to do your best, and it tends to work a lot better than you think. And
well, that's bullshit.
What's so interesting about the hierarchies that people set up is that that's how they're set up. They're not set up on power. They're set up on reciprocity and skill. And
that's one of the biggest bullshit things that maybe he's ever said.
Trust. Not always. You know, and if you're in a job where you work hard
ready?
and you're a good
Look at
guy
this.
and you're doing your best,
Ready?
and your boss is a bloody tyrant and you never get a break, it's like, okay, fine. You're in a Foucault world.
Okay. What he's saying there is you're in a Foucault, as in Michel Foucault, world, not a fucko world. So I found that kind of funny that they screwed that up. Seems like a relatively straightforward thing. That's what I went through all that trouble to show you. I apologize. It's one of my most hated videos because it is so, it literally says, like, if your job is bad, quit your job and get one that pays better. Maybe aim to get it. This is literally what it says. It says, maybe aim to get a job that pays you 3 times more than your current job pays you. It's certainly, and I think the exact words are, it's certainly a possibility and it's a good goal. What the fuck? What the fuck? I don't get it. Anyway, Feynman. I'm a fan of Foucault, but that's what I should rename this particular installment. The 64th episode reached a milestone of, for this channel, I want to say like 40,000 hours or something like that watched, which is pretty good considering the number of subscribers. Pretty good for this channel. makes me happy. Look, I don't want to suffer alone. I want all of you to suffer with me. Exactly. Look, quit your job and really, really, really concentrate, man. Take a couple of days and really imagine lots of money. In fact, let's make it crypto, filling up your bank account. If you can't manifest that, maybe there's something wrong with you. Good night, Olevi. Oh, that's cool. From Belgium. Perhaps he brought chocolate. Wait a minute, why do I hate my neighbor? Do I hate my neighbor? I love my neighbor. Actually, one of my neighbors I don't like. Maybe that's what you were talking about. Richard Feynman's wife died of tuberculosis. He became a bit of a nihilist, but a stoic nihilist. And he wrote, apart from his scientific books, he wrote a bunch of books that were stories. They're just like kind of stories of his life. I think he dictated them, and he was basically just like talking about his experiences in a sort of an informal expositional way. And this person who was sort of writing down the stories for him wrote them down. And one of those books is called Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman. One is called What Do You Care What Other People Think? And when I was younger, I read those books a lot. But one of the stories he told was like, all of his friends knew him as the person whom, if you hung around, like the life of the party, everywhere Dick Feynman goes, there's like an adventure happening. So he would have friends who would go with him, like on certain nights, and excuse me, to sort of ride on the coattails of his magnetism, his charisma, and experience well, not vicariously, they were there, but experience some of what he experienced. And so he was telling a story about how one of his friends came out with him and basically was bored out of his mind, and nothing like happened that night. I think they even went to like a burlesque club or something like that. Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, I prefer the neighbor who doesn't say hello to the neighbor behind me who yells at me, or yelled at me until recently, because I have a tree with a branch that extends into our yard. But I rent. The trees are not my responsibility. I told the landlord, what else am I supposed to do? That tree's gone now. So Feynman replied to his friend that, yeah, when I go out, 19 times out of 20, or maybe even more than that, nothing happens. Like, you can't just expect something to happen every time, but you never know when or how you're planting seeds or throwing things down that one day someone will pick up. And if you don't do it, even if it's not bearing fruit, then it's absolutely impossible for anything to come of it. So, his philosophy was to do it and not tailor it for anyone, not to act in a way that he wouldn't normally act, but to open himself up a bit. And the idea was that something would come of it eventually, but he wouldn't be able to predict what that was. And to me, that kind of was pretty apropos of life in general. Like, you never know when you're meeting your next boss, right? You never know, or you might know when you do it, but like the events leading up to it are usually not going to be things that you plan out, unless if you're going for an interview. That's a bad example. Often you know when you are meeting your next boss, because you go on a job interview and the person you're talking to is often, if it goes well, going to be your next boss. I think you know what I'm talking. Okay, your new best friend, right? These labyrinthine ways that you discover new pathways in your life are difficult to predict, right? And this is like an argument. Really, it's an argument for, I guess, being sociable or being open-hearted in dealing with people. With the irony that, can I turn off echo cancellation? With the irony that if you do it, once you have that, once you have that aforementioned knowledge, like once you realize that, hey, I'm doing this thing, I am potentially Johnny Appleseeding myself, then maybe it can't be considered genuine. Probably, certainly, it can't be considered altruistic. You are cultivating connections, and you're taking the bet that there's a future benefit that you can't yet see. Yeah, but that's the bet, right? And that the connection is going to be there, even if you don't know what form it's going to take, or which road, or what effort will succeed. You're casting a wide net, but that kind of strips it of its nobility, right? Unless you have the ability to sort of engage in these behaviors for their own sake and actually enjoy them, which I don't know. Like I feel like even then, like there's probably this subconscious wish ingrained in us, like when we're really young, and we just might be entirely unaware of it. Maybe that's the evolutionary trait that gets selected for over the millennia, like to favor people who do that. I think did I see Derek Michael in here? Hey Derek, how are you doing? Yeah, do talk. Yeah. I'm sure I'm playing with a fucking dirty Band-Aid that I took off my thumb just before I started this. Disgusting. Hey, Derek. It's good to see you. I don't know, for those of you who don't know Derek makes videos, has made videos for a really, really long time. And when I first started making videos, I remember watching his videos. Yeah. This is kind of what I'm talking about, Pivy, right? So how does this tie back into suicide? It does, I promise. As I said earlier, from my point of view, like, I don't see happiness as anything other than a distraction from sadness. Sadness is the baseline state when one is confronted with the starkness of reality. I mean, come on, like, it just sounds like a bad joke. We were created and made aware that we were going to die. Like, that just sounds cruel. Like, it's one of those things where, like, names of things that they're so ingrained in our psyche that they sound better than they are. Like Metallica, right? Like, terrible. What a terrible band name. I mean, it'd be a good, like, glam metal band name, I feel like. But, like, we've as a society, like, we now associate Metallica with the Beatles, right? Like, I've talked about this with people before. Like, what a terrible, terrible band name. I get the pun. I get it. First of all, if you're making your band name based on a pun, I'm criticizing the Beatles. Ridiculous. All right, so we were created, we were made aware that we were going to end. I mean, you just have to look to there's so many paradigms that we set up that mirror this kind of a dynamic. Like every sport, like, anything that uses an elimination premise, you compete to survive. Elimination's the punishment. I also don't believe that, well, I believe there are some people, but I think most people actually do fear death. I realize this is my own opinion and that people are able to overcome, but that's when I start to wonder, like, what does overcome even really mean in that context? If you have the ability to kind of abstract the way you think using analogs like Epicurus, with you shouldn't fear death. Epicurus said, you shouldn't fear death because where you are, death is not, and where death is, you are not. So like, there's no overlying of the two. So you shouldn't fear it. Or there's like a lot of people also do that. I didn't exist for millions of years before my birth. So why should I care about the fact that I'm going to not exist for millions of years after my birth? Like, I find that kind of risible, right? Like, I find that purposefully obtuse, because the difference there, I think, is like really clear. Okay. I don't need to explain to people that knowledge and existence and the way linear time works and, those three things. I mean, I don't need to explain to you why, like, that's kind of a pop psychology hand-waving placebo, right? Yeah, I know I didn't exist for millions of years, and I don't lament the time that I didn't exist. I don't lament the time in the future, a million years from now, when I don't exist. What I lament is the fear of the coming event and the uncertainty around it. And it's the single biggest, well, arguably the second single biggest event of our lives. We were not given a bunch of time, at least with any sort of like higher functioning brains. It depends on, I guess it depends on what you think of fetuses, but certainly, no, yeah, as a fetus, we didn't know we were going to be born. We didn't know the horrors of the world we were going to be born into. It just seems cruel to be given death in this sort of knowing way like that. But regardless, like, so if you overcome your fear of death using that, either one of those or any other abstraction method, those are coping mechanisms. You don't need coping mechanisms if you don't fear the thing that you're trying to cope with. You're coping. If you don't fear death, you don't need to cope. So you don't need coping mechanisms. So if someone says to me, like, well, I don't fear death because of this, and then they present me with a coping mechanism, my reaction is, you just gave me a coping mechanism for dealing with something that you fear right after saying you don't fear death, right? So maybe your coping mechanism succeeded, and you can say that you don't fear death, but the fact that you needed to use a coping mechanism at all means that you did fear death. And my feeling is that no matter how airtight or watertight your coping mechanism is, there will come a point, and maybe it's when you have an NDE, or maybe it's, when you're diagnosed with a terminal illness or something, who knows what it could be, where that coping mechanism is going to break down. If you don't fear something, you don't need a coping mechanism. It's, be as stoic as you want to be. That's not overcoming, really, in my mind. That's putting a super bright light bulb right in front of your face to block out the sun, right? Or the dark, I guess, in this case. Let's take another moment. Well, yeah. And that's a coping mechanism, right? But you say it right there, right? You have death anxiety, right? So you have death anxiety and you do things to get through it. Conversely, Nosh's contribution is that BWTF has a song called Butt Fart. Both are valid points. And I did not know that this was what that stood for. I loved a happy... I do very much like Trail of Dead. How Near, How Far, one of my favorites. We'll never go near, I'm sorry, I appreciate you, Nasha, I really do. We'll never go near Old Bay. Although I would agree that season 3 of House was probably the apotheosis of that particular show. Well, see, yeah, I'm arguing that depression is the baseline. But I'm often wrong. What are people's favorite bands? Well, yeah, this is part and parcel. I'm not really making a distinction between those two things. I envy you, Nasha. I mean, Old Bay is disgusting. It's disgusting. Well, that's just like, come on, Q. Do not believe that for a moment. And if I did, then I'd be worried. Do you like that? Well, then I'd be worried. Right, and this is the fallacy, right? Like, this is the fallacy of, well, surely this must all lead to something, right? Well, it's not my baseline. I mean, it is my baseline, but it's not a baseline that I arrived at on my own. It is a baseline that is part of the school of philosophical thought that resonated most with me. Am I saying that if you don't, gosh, I guess I am being like a presumptuous prick. I appreciate that you all give me the leeway to be a presumptuous prick, and I should probably write like a thank you note. Oh, to everybody for allowing me. Dear listeners, Thank you for allowing me to be a presumptuous prick. Oh, that was a weird autocorrect. I am often I am often, period. I am. Condescending. Grumpy. Unaware of global gestalt experience outside of my own bubble. A solipsistic worldview. I likely cultivated in the 4th grade. My arm itches. Okay, let's see how fast I can type. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Not very fast. The quick brown... Oh, jeez. At one point, I thought I was a pretty fast typist. Oh, shit. The lazy dong. Why are you relaxed by my voice? Why? I mean, that's great. I don't think that's weird. I was just talking about this, Grace. Or, well, I guess I wasn't just talking about this, but I was talking about this earlier. I do have a couple of videos where I do this. Yeah, I do love this keyboard. My coworkers, not so much. They do not like it. Let's see. I have so many half-finished ASMR video ideas. And this one is called Your Parents Are Having a Dinner Party Downstairs. It's so comforting. I know they're safe, my protectors. I can hear them enjoying themselves, happy. And that makes me happy, vicariously. I feel and take on some of their embracing of life for its simple pleasures, even though I don't quite understand all of them. Clinking glasses, chuckling. Periods of low voices telling stories, followed by raucous laughter. You're safe. You don't need to think about it. You can relax. Time slows. You're safe. Almost always, this was the case. I knew parts of it had to be a dream, but I had no idea what parts. It all seemed equally real or unreal, yet I knew at least some of it was true from the events of the next day. But that didn't necessarily mean all of it was true. Could I have mixed up things that happened in a dream with things that actually did happen, muddying the waters between dream and reality? Is it possible that all of it was true? No, it couldn't have all been true, no way. I repeated that to myself over and over. I must have fallen asleep at some point, maybe woke up, or only partly woke up, and incorporated things out of context, or maybe even redreamed some of the things I heard while awake, more closely knitting together the experiences into something I could digest a little easier. What did I know to be true? Well, I knew my parents were having a dinner party. I knew the rules. I knew I was not supposed to come out of my room except to go to the bathroom, and definitely not supposed to go downstairs. I'd broken that rule before, after a nightmare. It wasn't a big deal, but I didn't like being stared at, so the rule seemed as much for my benefit as for my mom and dad's. I could hear the voices, but not really words, not usually. They overlapped. It was an orchestra of different frequencies. I could hear syllables, booming bass, sibilants all together. I remember wondering what they found to talk about for so long. There were no awkward silences. It's like if you got enough adults in a room and some wine, of course, that you eventually reached a critical mass and got some sort of perpetual motion going, that motion being the flapping of gums. But that sounds harsh. As I said, I found it comforting. In truth, I loved it. I retreated into the comfort. It was very primal, like stories told around a fire in a cave. I felt enveloped. You're safe. You don't need to think about it. Also, I had nightmares, recurrent nightmares. I was never a good sleeper. Sometimes the nightmares were so intense my mother had to sit in my room until I fell asleep, and if I woke up again, I would run to my parents' room and sleep at the foot of their bed. The next morning, if my mom woke up first, which she usually did, she would quietly take me by the hand back to my room. My father felt she overindulged me in this way. But that was never a problem on their dinner party nights. It was almost always a problem on dinner party nights that took place in other adults' homes. A sitter was a poor substitute. What good is a sitter? An untrained mercenary. What good is that if there's an enemy at the gate? I needed a large group of adults. I needed their merriment to reassure me, not the snide jibes of a girl not much older than me. What was worse was in those cases I couldn't even go to my parents' bedroom if I had a nightmare, as they wouldn't be there. I'd have to pretend to want a glass of water or some milk, just to have a bit of human contact with the sitter. And even though that contact was always exasperated, like she took the job title literally, anytime she had to do anything other than sitting, it was an egregious breach of the stated terms of her contract. No, she would not be much of a protector. She was barely even company. What else did I know about that night? I knew my parents had argued about the guest list. I knew there were people my mother wanted to attend that my father would just as soon never see again. I knew when that couple in question arrived because Dad came up the stairs into the master bedroom to take some pills or splash water on his face, most likely both. I knew this couple by their voices. The man had a clipped, high-pitched voice, and his wife, most likely wife, had a lower, less defined voice, like she moved her lips when she talked, but never parted her teeth. That's an excerpt of future ASMR video. Your parents are having a dinner party downstairs. Brackets ASMR. Well, it's called suspension of disbelief, Ms. Get with the program. Ooh, that's great, Lexi. It's not that far off from where this story went. I mean, it's a little far off. Okay, it's not. It's pretty far off, but like there is some amount of nefariousness on the part of the parents. That is all the more nefarious because of both the subtlety and the gaslighting that goes on. Katerina, the problem is I originally wrote it as just a short story. And then later, I was like, well, maybe I could make this into an ASMR video. And so I started rewriting it in the form of like, okay, well, how can I make this as like a narrator kind of telling this story about something that happened to them when they were a child. And so some of this is in the present tense, and then the remainder of it is, it switches tense a bunch of times. So I'd rather not. go too far into it. But I want to finish it. And then, no, it's not this. It's subtle. What? Is that true? How could you not have remarked on it before? No, never. Never, never, never. All right, so why is this not working? Here we go. Been a lovely couple of hours. I've enjoyed it immensely. Glad to be back on the horse. We didn't really get to the end of the suicide discussion. Maybe that's for the best. Let's just say, to each their own. And I do think my personal take on it is that there are valid reasons to exit this life, and that we should respect people who want to do that, especially if they have, reached a point in their life where I don't know who you are, but hello, Julianne. Oh, Q, that's very sweet. Absolutely not necessary, of course, but yeah, I may do something like a YouTube membership for the Phoenician Sailor channel, but if I do that, you may start to see these things pop back up on that channel. I don't know. I didn't know Václav was here. Václav, you have a knack for showing up right at the end. I would love to know how you're doing. You don't have any, I think, so Václav was able to communicate with me a little bit, and I think is not able to, because of certain restrictions where he is, not able to call in. But if you are able to call in, Václav, I would think, let's see here. I would certainly make an exception, even though. Hey, keyboard, work. Oh, a couple of people, damn it. A couple of people wrote in. I should have checked email earlier, and I apologize, but I don't think that Václav can call in. Let's push it to next week. I think I'm going to be doing. I'm going to regret saying this, but I think I'm going to be doing more live streams, more off the cuff stuff. That's my intent at this point in time. Anyway, And yes, Václav, hope that you're doing okay. Glad that Ms. is okay. I have heard a little bit from Arabisadora, and they are okay, although very, very upset. Oh, that's super kind, Karen. Well, I don't want tribute. But anyway, thank you all for coming out tonight. And next week, I cannot say no suicide talk. I can't do that. I don't have the ability to, and we have to conclude it. This really was just part one. Part one, which was bringing up the question and telling a story about Richard Feynman that didn't really have, was tangentially related at best. But hey, remember, look, if Albert Camus can write The Stranger and he managed to live his life, then I guess, maybe we all kind of do it. How about that, Ms.? I'm okay. Look, maybe suicidal ideation is a healthy mode of expression. Maybe. I don't know. All right. I hope everybody has a good night. And I'll see you. Well, if you're around, I'm guessing I'm going to stream before next week. I'm feeling the urge. So if you're around, I'll see you before then. And if not, oh, Julianne, thank you. Lately, I've been going live for over a year. Almost every week. Look, this isn't true. This is misrepresenting the truth, Miss. I did not spend 2 hours talking about suicide. Spent actually very little of that time talking about it. Tried to talk about it. Y'all didn't let me. All right. I will see you all soon, and take care. And I have to find the button now because I'm working off one. Oh, LQ and KJ, I didn't say hi, but hi and good night. And I'll see y'all soon.